Hello everyone, it's Andre from SWL. Welcome to episode 17 of my series, the SWL DXing News Report. This episode was recorded on the 21st of November 2024. In this podcast, I talk about radio-related news, frequency changes, new stations, closures, and anything else that might interest DXers. An RSS feed link is available via Spotify. It is in the video description. In this week's episode, I talk about Radio Erena, a shortwave station that targets Eritrea that is facing financial difficulties. There is another AI radio presenter experiment, this time in Finland. The Swiss public broadcaster is preparing listeners for its FM switch-off at the end of the year, and the citizens of Liechtenstein voted to abandon its public broadcaster. Also, some frequency news, information about medium wave and shortwave transmitter maps created by a young DXer, news about yet another new XHDATA radio, and I end with the propagation forecast. France 24 reports that Radio Erena, a shortwave station that broadcasts from Paris to the Eritrean diaspora and also directly to the inhabitants of Eritrea, is facing closure. Every day, Radio Erena, which means Radio Our Eritrea in the language Tigrinya, reports in Tigrinya and Arabic on life in this country. Eritrea has been described as Africa's North Korea. In 2001, the Eritrean government decided to close down all private media. Since then, only the voice of the state has been heard. A handful of media are trying to resist the censorship in Eritrea by broadcasting from abroad, usually on shortwave. The vast majority of them are linked to Eritrean political movements. Radio Erena is the only one that claims to be independent and apolitical. Although it is difficult to estimate the number of listeners, given the limited access to the country, the German Deutsche Welle Academy estimated in 2017, that's quite some time ago, that about 500,000 people in Eritrea listen to Radio Erena at least once a week. The NGO Reporters Without Borders estimates that Eritrea even manages to do worse than Pyongyang, North Korea, in terms of press freedom. It is ranked 177th out of 180 countries in its World Press Freedom Index. Eritrea is described by Reporters Without Borders as the number one prison for journalists in sub-Saharan Africa. But now, due to a lack of funding, Radio Erena is threatened with closure after 15 years of existence. The funds currently allocated by private sponsors, mostly American and European NGOs, are no longer sufficient to cover the costs of the radio station. In the space of just a year, the Radio Erena team has shrunk from 6 to 3 people, including 2 experienced journalists who fled to France from Eritrea. Without new financial partners, the station has lost almost half its budget for 2025, reported France 24. You can hear Radio Erena on 9585 kHz daily from 1700 to 1800 UTC from a transmitter in Aldabaya in the United Arab Emirates. I reported in my previous episode that the Polish radio station OFF Radio Krakow ended its experiment with AI radio presenters after just 2 days. The experiment faced a huge backlash from listeners. The website Radio World reports the radio station in Finland, called Loop, has seemingly not heard the message that listeners don't like AI voices. Finnish media company Sanoma Media, the owner of Loop, is using AI from radio.cloud to bring a voice to its afternoon drive program. The afternoon drive program was previously unhosted, but now listeners will hear a program hosted and presented by Ani. It is based on the voice of Satu Kotonen, program director for Loop's sister station HitMix. Ani is not the first foray into AI for Sanoma Media. In September, the company began trialing local weather forecasts assembled by AI and read by a machine voice on its HitMix and Aito Iskelma channels. Content insight strategist from Sanoma Media, Sami Virtanen, said the company is constantly developing their products so that listeners get even better and more interesting content. I think some listeners would beg to differ on that remark. The Swiss public broadcaster SRG SSR has started a campaign on its website to inform listeners about the switchover from FM to DAB+ for this broadcaster by the end of this year. The campaign also aims to convince listeners why this is a good move. SRG SSR says on its website that FM radio has had its day. The broadcaster says radio is increasingly listened to via digital reception modes, particularly on the internet, both in mobile and stationary mode, and via DAB+. It says DAB+ is the new international standard that succeeds FM. In Switzerland, more than 99% of the population already receive DAB+. The technological change has been underway for several years, and sales of DAB+ radios are booming in Switzerland, SRG SSR says. It says while only 500,000 DAB+ devices were sold 10 years ago, the number has risen to 6.7 million in 2023. The broadcaster says switching to DAB+ will save the environment and that DAB+ creates significantly less electromagnetism than FM. It says the public is increasingly interested in radiation exposure, which has been brought to the forefront by the debate around 5G. While 4G or 5G antennas for mobile telephony are by necessity located in populated areas, the opposite is true with DAB+, whose antennas are located in high areas and far from populations. As a result, the population is only exposed to a small amount of radiation, SRG SSR says. The broadcaster says some of the advantages of DAB+ is that reception throughout Switzerland will be uninterrupted and crackle-free, unlike FM, and that automatic channel search on DAB+ is better than manual frequency search on FM. I think many FM listeners will disagree. The website Radio World reports that voters in the tiny Principality of Liechtenstein approved an initiative to end funding for the country's public broadcaster, Radio Liechtenstein. This is the first time European voters have effectively abolished their public service broadcaster. The ballot initiative was proposed by the conservative populist party Democraten pro Liechtenstein, which has been calling for ending state support for the station since 2018. Officials from the party objected to the 4.4 million Swiss francs budgeted to support the station, and instead argued that Radio Liechtenstein should be privatized. Voters apparently agreed, with 55.4% of them supporting the ballot initiative. With this vote, the law authorizing the public service broadcaster will be repealed at the end of 2025. In a comment reported by the newspaper Landesspiegel, Radio Liechtenstein board chairman Jörg Bachmann states that the station has almost 14 months now to find a new sponsor, and he made it clear that the goal was to keep Radio Liechtenstein on the air. Radio Liechtenstein was founded in 1995 as a private station called Radio L, but when facing closure in 2004, the Liechtenstein government took it over and converted it to Radio Liechtenstein, a public service broadcaster. Radio Liechtenstein transmits on 100.2 FM, 96.9 FM, and 103.4 FM across various locations in the Principality. On to some frequency news. Ifrikya FM seems to be absent from 17,600 kHz, a frequency where it is listed from 600 to 2200 every day. In my own monitoring, I have not heard Ifrikya FM on this frequency for about 2 weeks now. This is usually a very strong signal that can be heard all around the world, including in North America. Reports from other DXers on my channel seem to confirm the absence. Ifrikya FM also uses 9500, 9700, 13790, 15110, and 15190 kHz. But I must add that my monitoring on 15110 and 15190 kHz has also not been positive. I haven't heard the station. Maybe it's just got to do with propagation at the moment. Radio Exterior de España also seems to be absent from 17755 kHz, its Africa and Middle East beam, where it usually broadcasts from 1900 to 2300 UTC. Radio Exterior de España's Africa and Middle East beam was also quiet for several months from August to October this year, which was towards the end of the A24 shortwave season, on 15390 kHz. It returned on the 23rd of October to that frequency, and then I also heard Radio Exterior de España on 17755 kHz at the start of the B24 season, but after a few days the signal disappeared again. This has been confirmed also by other monitors around the world. Liam, a young DXer from Denver, Colorado, has shared two great resources that he created with me. One is a new Google My Maps presentation that he is working on. It is a map of active and inactive long-wave and medium-wave transmitter sites in Europe. He says it is not complete yet, but he is working on it now. In a previous podcast, I also shared a map Liam created of global shortwave transmitter sites, both current ones and ones that have been closed down. Liam has also created a 2-hour-long video with interval signals of shortwave radio stations from the past and the present. This is a very useful resource for anyone interested in the past and present of shortwave radio. The links to Liam's maps and to his shortwave interval signal video are in the description of this podcast. XHDATA has just released an updated version of the very popular D220 pocket radio. This little radio was one of the biggest surprises in 2024, a return to a simple analog dial pocket radio of the past, with very good reception despite the tiny dial size. The new D221 drops the 64 to 87 MHz FM band in favor of the NOAA's weather band for listeners in the United States. Thank you to Dennis and to Paul, two listeners, who told me about the new D221. It is currently available on the XHDATA website at an introductory price of $9.90, and you can buy it in green and orange colors, not black. This price is slightly lower than the one for the D220, so it is a good buy right now. There is a link in the description of this podcast where you can buy the radio directly from XHDATA. XHDATA is also running several promotions at the moment, with the D808 marked down to $70, the D109 weather band is $40, and the D608 weather band is $37. Most of their other radios are also being offered at discounted prices right now. Remember, you can win one of two D220 radios in a raffle currently running on my channel. The draw will be in a live stream on the 1st of December, so you still have some time to enter. There is a link in the description of this podcast to the video explaining how the raffle works and how you can enter. And you can also win the XHDATA D109 weather band in that same draw. So that means there are 3 radios up for grabs on my channel, just in time for Christmas. These are all 3 brand new radios, and they will be shipped to you directly from the XHDATA warehouses in China. To end, a brief propagation outlook based on forecasts from the NOAA's Space Weather Prediction Center. Solar activity has been at low levels over the past few days, and no Earth-directed coronal mass ejection events, or CMEs, were observed. Solar activity is expected to remain at low to moderate levels from now, that is the 21st of November, until early December. Solar wind conditions, however, are anticipated to become elevated on the 22nd of November due to coronal hole high-speed stream, that is CHHSS, influences. This will result in unsettled conditions in the geomagnetic field on 22 November. For a longer-term outlook, geomagnetic field activity is likely to be at unsettled to active levels on 25 to 27 November, 30 November to 3 December, 6 to 8 December, and 11 to 14 December. All of these due to the influence from recurrent CHHSS effects. Mostly quiet periods are likely from 21 to 24 November, 28 and 29 November, 4 and 5 December, and 9 to 10 December. So it seems as if we are in for periods of some good HF propagation, interspersed with many periods of unstable propagation, as we have become used to over the past few months. There is a link in the description of this podcast to a website called Ham Radio for Non-Techies, with clear and simple propagation charts that you can refer to for the latest HF propagation conditions on a daily basis, as these conditions can change quite suddenly. That's all for today. Please send me your news items and reception reports so that I can share them here. If you would like to share reception reports, please tell me your location, the radio you used, the stations and frequencies you received, and please provide SINPO or SIO codes for the signals you received. You can contact me at andre9@duck.com. That is ANDRE, the number 9, at duck, that is DUCK.com. Happy listening, everyone.